Thank you. All right, so this is the work session for Minnetrista City Council, June 21st. It's 5 o'clock, a little bit earlier start than usual. And first order of business, I will do a roll call. When I call your name, you can just say here. So first of all, I'm Lisa Whalen. I'm the mayor. Council members present are Council Member Ann McGregor.
Here.
Council Member Kathleen Refkin.
Here.
Councilmember John Chumberlain.
Here.
And Councilmember Pam Mortensen.
Here.
And also joining us staff is our organizer and our city administrator, Mike Baroni.
Here.
And our director of administration, Ellie Pulfus.
Here.
Our finance director, Brian Grimm.
Here.
And our public works superintendent, Gary Peters.
Here.
All right. With that, we have on our work session this evening, we have 3 items: our fund balance discussion, and then our broadband update and possibly some discussion, and then organics recycling. What I'm going to try and do is keep us on schedule. So we do need to break before our 7 o'clock meeting. So if need be, we'll have to bring the organics back, but I'm hoping we can get through all 3. So with that, we're going to start with the fund balance. Mr. Grimm?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, and I would totally concur. If a break is always great. I've got a lobster fettuccine from Scotty B's waiting for me in the fridge between meetings.
Be quiet. Stop.
So if that works out great, that would be wonderful. So I'll try to, at least on the fund balance discussion, if I can yield back some time or move things ahead, that'd be great. But we'll dive right into this. As far as this is I attached a few pages. I think this is pages 2 through 9 of the work session, and I tried to summarize in the memo all the different information. I think the nexus of this is from the audit that was presented about a month ago on May 17th, in our general fund balance having a higher balance based on the additional revenues we received in 2020. We've talked about the CARES funds that came in and how we've applied those, and then as well as building permit revenues. So I attached basically the summary general fund page of the audit in the packet on I think it was page 4 there, as far as just showing our beginning of year balance, end of year balance, and all the different revenues and expenditures, what would have you've seen in the audit. And then also just a little narrative behind that, talking about some of the different percentages of general fund balance to expenditures showing there. Thought I would then extrapolate out on the next page. Basically shows our last 3 years of general fund activity. On the general fund summary there, it has 18, 19, and 20 actuals, and obviously you can see the 20 actuals is, the previous 2 years we had spent down a little fund balance. In 2020 we had the pretty large surplus, and then it also incorporate our 2021 adopted budget to show that at the end of 21 we're projected to be around about 63% if all things come in as projected. Otherwise, yeah, I guess the last sheet I attached was more just I guess there's a couple different documents yet that were after that, the cash and investments balances through June here, and just to sort of show where all the different funds are at. And I think I had made one recommendation that maybe we would look at transferring some funds from the general fund to our capital equipment fund, and seeing the cash balance there is low, and maybe we wouldn't have to do an equipment certificate in 2022. Just a suggestion or thought. Obviously, City Council gets to make that decision. And then, I guess lastly, as far as just funds coming in with the American Rescue Plan Act, I know that's on the agenda on the regular meeting, but basically that's not really included as part of the documents I presented or part of the discussion. Obviously, that'll be further discussion, once those funds would be in hand at the city. What's projected, we'll have some dollars come in 2021 and then again in 2022, but those would have to be spent on certain things as far as broadband or utility projects, and that's still evolving. So I didn't really want to I just wanted to mention that, not that I'm forgetting about it, but not to really bring those into this discussion here. And then lastly, I guess to summarize, the last 2 pages that were attached were just the fund balance policy, talking about the 40% minimum fund balance, and that the city strives to be around 50% each year. And that's, I guess, it in a nutshell. So I'll probably open it up for council comments or questions or suggestions, whatever, unless, I don't know if Mike has anything to add right now, but otherwise I'll turn it back to the mayor probably.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to make a comment regarding the new funding, the ARP funding. It's really far more restrictive as to what we can use it for, if you will. So far, what we've been told from state legislators and the League of Minnesota Cities and all of that, we can use it for broadband, whether it's unserved, underserved, but we can also even, right now, they're telling us possibly even use it for improving broadband to those areas that already have it. We can also use it for water and sewer infrastructure, but right now, those are the three kind of two categories, if you will, utility infrastructure and broadband. So those are the things we can spend it on. That's maybe why we should kind of set that aside for tonight and decide and it's not in our coffers yet, but what we should do and how we should allocate the additional funds that we currently have. Mr. Baroni, Mike, do you have anything else to add?
No, Mayor, you summarized the current legislation, the ARP funding. It is restrictive, but it also is much, much different than the CARES funding, whereas the CARE funding actually had a fairly fast turnaround time. This has a years and years timeline associated with it. So it allows you to plan if you're going to use whatever dollars you seem or deem fit for infrastructure related things, which generally take a lot longer to plan. So, I mean, there's a positive and a negative. So it's a lot more money, a little more restrictive, longer timeline to plan and implement. So.
Thank you. All right, Council. So one of the reasons we're bringing this back is because, as you noticed in your packet, our fund balance policy says 40 to 50. If it goes over 50 a little bit, that's fine. In the past, more for the new council members for reference, we've had a higher fund balance than 50% in the past 5 or 6 years. And what we've done is we've used some of it, not all of it, a portion of it to offset our levy increases. Now, having said that, currently we're sitting at 63%. And so we want to take a look and see, and that's pretty high. So we want to take a look and see what do we want to do with these funds, if anything. That's the council's decision. And so I'll start it out with that. I'll start with questions or comments. Anyone? We'll start with Pam.
Well, I think one of the biggest priorities in my mind is getting our broadband, improved through the city. But it sounds like the funds that we're going to get, possibly in the near future, being restrictive, that broadband might be a good thing to use some of that money or the majority of that money for. When will we know for sure when we're getting that money?
Pretty soon. We know well, we should be getting half of it fairly soon. And then the other half, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you want to jump in here. The other half will be coming, I think, next year. Brian?
Yeah, correct, Madam Mayor and Council. So what we've been told, and myself and Mike Baroni have been in on a couple different webinars here recently, is so we're taking the action tonight to officially authorize application for the funds. So we'll be doing that as a staff level this week. And then they said that at Minnesota Management Budget, who's distributing the funds on the behalf of the state, I guess through the the federal process, that we should be getting it sometime after July 1st, this first half, where there ends up being 425,000, 430,000. That's been the most recent estimates. And then the other half would come sometime probably similar time frame in 2022, maybe, first half of 2022, spring, summer 2022 is, I think, is what we've been told.
Will we know soon for sure we'll get that money in 2022?
It's fairly certain.
Yeah,
Brian, what would you say?
Yeah, from everything we've been told, they're wanting to disperse it in two halves. And I don't know if that's the way that the money's flowing from the federal to the states for cities under 50,000, or it's called non-entitlement cities. I know cities that are larger have already gotten their first disbursement, just from knowing some other colleagues. But the way that it's supposed to happen for cities under 50,000, non-entitlement cities, is half now, or shortly after July 1st, or sometime in July is what we've been told, and then the other half sometime during 2022. But everything they keep talking about is that it's going to be the full amount will be received just in two portions.
Okay, so it's guaranteed that whatever the total dollar amount, we will get that total amount, but it will be just in two different time periods.
Yes. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. They
Okay.
talked a little bit about that it could be a little different based on if all cities apply for their dollars and that type of thing. But I got to imagine the vast majority are. So it's going to be probably around that, 100. They keep talking about $105 per capita, which puts us at 860,000 roughly in total.
Yeah.
Okay.
The LMC was saying 860,000. That's what the LMC is saying. The LMC's League of Minnesota Cities. That was their estimate.
Okay, and then one other question. Brian, you said the equipment certificates for 2022, what would that dollar amount be if you have an estimated amount?
Yeah, we're working through at the staff level, starting to talk about our capital improvement plan, our equipment, 5-year plan. It would probably be in that, $250,000 range potentially, and usually we don't want to issue debt below that amount anyway, but I guess, yeah, my suggestion would be a good place for maybe some of this money would be to transfer, a couple $100,000, from the general fund over to the capital improvement fund, and then we wouldn't need to issue equipment certificates in 2022. My estimate right now.
Okay. Those are my big questions right now, and I'll wait to hear what the other ones say.
All right. Can I, real quick, Brian, the dollar amount, what is the delta between the 50% and the projected balance at the end of this year being 63%? How many dollars are we talking there? Is that the 674,000?
It would be about, so our budgeted expenditures for this year are basically in the general fund about 5.2 million. So if you take 5.2 million times 50%, it would be 2.6 million, and we're projected to be at that 3,263,000. So yeah, you're close. It'd be 660,000 or something like that. Just quick math.
Yeah, I think it's 674 or something like that. Okay. All right. All right. Let's go to Ann.
Okay, well, I had the same question. I was trying to figure out what it is you wanted us to tell you as far as the amount of money that you wanted to have. As soon as we have the money come in and we know we have it, I have no issue taking money from the current CARES money and putting that into either capital equipment fund or the road maintenance fund or some other fund. So I don't have any issues with it.
Okay. So let's see. So we have, if I look here, it says 674, 655 is the difference, or potentially the difference between the 50% and the 63%. I'm not recommending that we designate all of that to various projects, but that's kind of just to give you an idea.
Okay, I have a question on that. Is it the 674, 655 minus the 163, 113 on that sheet?
That'd be a Brian question. Brian?
Brian?
Are we on page 6 of the packet?
Yeah.
Yes.
4.
Before,
all right, never
sorry.
mind. Maybe
Yeah.
4, I think. So it's the one that says City of Minnetrista schedule revenues, expenditures, and has everything listed. And at the bottom, you see the 674, 655, but you also see next to it, original, final, and you see net change in fund balances, and you see what looks like a negative. So is it the 674 or the 674 minus 163? And I could be stupid here, but it's okay. Just
No, it's okay.
answer.
The 674 was actually what was added to our bottom line. And basically at the beginning of the year of 2020, we had 2,806,000, and then our revenues over expenditures ended up being the 674, 655. Those other amounts left are more variances from budget to actual.
Okay, all right.
So Brian, Ben, are we talking, and I need to understand this, the dollar amount, not percentage, but the dollar amount between the 50% fund balance and the 63% fund balance? What is that dollar amount? Brian? Uh-oh. Can you guys hear me? No. Okay.
So currently, so it depends on if we're looking at, well, I guess so if at the end of 2021, if you're on page 6, so we'd be projected to have $3,263,000 roughly in the general fund at year end. If we basically end up spending down our budget of, if you go to the line item right above it of about, we have basically a projected spend down in 2021 of $217,000. So we don't know what our 2022 budget is yet for general fund expenditures, but if you just take the current year and round it to, that's where I was doing the 5,200,000 roughly of expenditures there. If you take half of that, you get 2.6 million. And then our projected year-end fund balance at the end of 2021 would be that 3,263,000. So I guess when I do the quick math on that, it's about 663,000.
Okay. All right. All right. I'm just kind of for
It's
my.
more of an anomaly almost that the amount of money that we basically had as a surplus in 2021 is basically the difference in this from the 63 to the 50%. They're two different numbers, but they're very similar in this case, just based on coincidence.
Yeah. All right. All right. And any other questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Kathleen?
This question is probably more for Gary. What equipment are we going to need to buy or replace next year or the year after?
Well, eventually be looking at the loader. I mean, we got by with postponed last year. We're probably pushing again this year, but that's probably got the, between that and one of our tandem, probably the two biggest expenditures we have. Some of the other things we're looking at replacing a mower, which is like $25,000 for our road ditch mowing, and one pickup. But some of the stuff can be pushed off, another year or two. But definitely down the pipe is going to be a tandem and the loader.
And estimating, like, how much do those cost?
A loader is going to be about $240,000 to $250,000, and a new tandem axle truck will be, anywhere from $275,000 to $300,000.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
okay.
I was going to say, go ahead, Kathleen.
Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to say, and some of those, we try to phase those out and balance it out each year, where maybe our equipment ends up being, 300,000-ish each year. So, if Gary can get something to go another year, and then maybe we'll buy a couple, because there's other components to our equipment plan too. The police needs to usually buy a squad or two each year, and then there's some technology, improvements that are budgeted out of the capital and equipment fund. So we usually just try to tie all the main components together and get it to be hopefully $250,000, $300,000 a year for equipment that, based on what's most pressing needed coming up.
And with all the new development, specifically my neighborhood, do we have enough equipment, or are we going to need more equipment once this is built out in 5 years?
Right now, we pretty much have enough equipment. It's going to be eventually manpower. Yeah, but just with the age of the equipment is going to be the big thing. Replace what we have for newer, better equipment, will help you.
Mhm. Okay. Anything else, Kathleen?
No, I think that's all I got right now.
All
And
right.
just to piggyback a little bit on that, this is Mike. When we have our internal discussions at staff level on this, we're thinking about exactly what Councilmember Refkin brought up is how are we based on how we're going to grow? And we kind of know. I mean, Brian and David do a pretty good job of trying to predict our growth, and we've been pretty close. Especially when you average it out over multiple years. Some years a little higher, some years a little lower, but we've kind of based some of the water rates on the 75 minimum, 75 homes per year, and we've been a little higher than that. But in general, we kind of have a good idea of what our growth is, and we try to factor that in as we look at the heavy equipment or squad cars and stuff like that. As Gary mentioned, manpower is going to, we'll probably take a look at that as well this year going forward. So, and we try to keep it in mind, council member and mayor, as we put these budgets together, so we don't come up short, so on anything. So, but without overextending ourselves. So.
Thanks, Mike. And John?
Some observations. One, I would consider the ARP money, when it comes, to be treated like restrictive funds, just like grant money. You get a grant for specific project. Obviously, you don't put that into general, it's restrictive. So I wouldn't even consider looking at that as being something that we could use for general. Secondly, just to keep in mind, hopefully it's minor, but obviously our yearly expenditures climb. So what is 50% this year is not going to be what 50% is next year. So even though we're at 62, even if nothing changed and our revenues come in correctly and our expenses come in correctly, next year's levy, we'll end up probably buying down some of that 62% already. So I don't want to get hog wild with this. Third, I would tend to agree with Mr. Grimm's proposal or suggestion. Looking at our budget package from last year and looking at our 5-year capital expenditure plan, we're pretty heavy on expenditures projected for 2022. Now, obviously, we know that can change as we get into the discussion here later this summer. But there is a big ticket item on there that Mr. Peters alluded to. It's replacing the John Deere loader, and that was projected at $240,000. I thought we had already deferred that once, but maybe that was something else we'd already deferred. And overhauls, I know we discussed the overhauls on it. That costs about two-thirds of the cost of a unit anyway, so why pour more money into it? I would be inclined to move some money from the surplus to general over to the capital equipment account. Doesn't have to be the whole ticket item, but certainly with this surplus, I don't see that we need to be doing any equipment certificates for equipment for at least for next year. Those would be my observations.
Thanks, John. So here's kind of how I view it. If I was doing it, I think I would divide up the surplus, the 674, into 3 buckets. One bucket would be, and if you divide it into 3, it's what, roughly 200 and roughly 225,000 each bucket. One bucket, I would say the 225 remains in the fund balance, general fund balance, where it currently is. And that does exactly what John was talking about. giving us a little bit of a buffer between the 50, it might be 52, 53%, something like that. The other bucket I would put this money into is the equipment capital CIP fund balance, giving us a little bit of a cushion in there. And then we may not have to do an equipment certificate next year. And then the other bucket I think I would put it into would be the road bucket, the road improvement bucket. And the reason I say that is because we're doing this road analysis, we're rating all the roads, and we've put off doing overlays, not mill and overlays, but we've put off doing overlays, which extends the life of some of our roads. And we've put that off for a while. And I'm thinking if we had roughly 225,000 to do some of those overlays, in the long run, it might save us some money. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. The other thing I look at is in 2022, we have 34,000 that we no longer will have to donate to the Gillespie Center. And do you recall, Brian, is it 72? Is it at 22 or 23 where we no longer have the debt payment for the Mound Fire Department? Do you know that? Is it 22 or is it 23?
I believe that's 23. I think the Gillespie comes off in 22, like you said, and then the Mound, our portion of their debt on their fire hall, or I guess building or whatever, comes off in 2023.
Okay, and then we also have some equipment certificates that will fall, I think one, if not, I think one at least, that will fall off as well in 22, right?
I believe the 2016 one would be done for in 2021.
Okay, so and that will help us out in terms of our budget being able to do what we need to do for our general operating expenses going forward. But with that said, that's kind of where I kind of am at in terms of putting some of this excess funds into. Anybody have comments on that? I'll start with John.
No, I would agree with that. I didn't take it that extra step. I didn't crunch the numbers other than just saying move some to the capital expenditure. But I would agree the road work has always been a high priority, and obviously we're spending a whole bunch this year that's kind of squeaking the coffers. So I would agree with your proposal.
Okay. Anne, any comments or ideas?
Yeah, I like the division that you want to do, and I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Pam?
I like it as well. I've been a priority. I like the priority of the roads as well. So I agree.
Okay. And Kathleen?
I like it. I like the division. The only thing I would say is that for the capital improvement, we put enough in there to cover the loader. So
Yeah.
maybe round
Yeah.
that one up more versus just three even numbers across. But yeah, putting it in
Right.
the road general fund.
So Brian, I think, what was it? What did we levy in this year for the capital improvement for CIP? Was it 50,000 or was it 100,000?
I know, yeah, we brought that back a couple of years ago, and let me just double check. Yeah, because I think I want to say we did in 2021. I think we got it to, in 2020 it was 50. We got it up to 100,000 in 2021. So
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm looking to try to get that to city council, obviously, is the final decision, to even get that up to like 150 in 2022, because it used to be 300,000 back in the day. And then I think as more money was put into roads, it was sort of a push-pull as far as where to, and then we switched to the equipment certificates with the interest rates being low. So, but to answer your question, I guess it was 100,000 for this year.
Okay, so even if let's say we don't increase it, I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, I'm just saying even if we don't increase it, but we still do the 100,000 plus the 225, that would get us closer to maybe what we need. And like Kathleen said, we can massage these numbers a little bit here and there to make sure that we get what we want in the specific categories. So I think this is just kind of a general giving staff more of an idea in terms of what we want to do. Is that fair, council? You can just say yes.
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 Okay. All right. Okay. So Brian
Let me-
and staff, go ahead.
I was just going to again, I know that obviously when we get into the budgeting, the numbers will change somewhere in one counter or the other. But just looking at last year's proposal for 2022 in capital, total capital was 544,000, which 150,000 was levied. So proposed again. So we're still looking at 344,000 as just, again, if everything is bought, the truck, there's only 2 squad cars, probably there's technology upgrades, etc. So just to keep that in mind, that moving 240 or whatever, we're probably still going to be playing with that down the line.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Good point, John. All right. Okay, staff, you have enough ideas and direction then?
Yeah,
Mr.
I think,
Burns? Okay.
Madam Mayor and Council, I think, yeah, this is good to get some good priorities and some good sort of targets for dollars and thoughts as far as what where to match our priorities to our dollars. So I think it's good. I don't know.
Okay.
Mike has any?
Nope, I think you're exactly correct. I'm good with this direction.
All right, great. Good comments. Really like them too. All right, so now we'll move on to the most exciting thing, broadband. I'm going to hand it right over to Allie.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. At the previous work session, you left me with a few requests, so I'll kind of update you on those. Your first one was to create some sort of map to show visual to show where MediaCom is not in the city. I was able to use the engineering software to create this map based on the addresses you guys gave me in the areas I know of. So keep in mind, this is approximate. I didn't do any sort of survey. We didn't hire anybody. So this is me just highlighting homes. So in the map on attachment A, there are 232 addresses. And you can kind of see a visual of where MediaCom is not and where we need service the most. I do believe I'm missing about 30 to 50 homes on there, but they're likely surrounding that area. I then sent this map to both Extra Time in Lakeside so they could create a map to send back to me of where they could get coverage. So those can be seen in attachment B and C. Their maps, it should be noted that they are assuming they get access to water towers in those maps. So that's an important thing to note as well. Your other request was to create a comparison chart between the two, so you can find that in attachment D. And then the big ticket here is our broadband meeting with MediaCom. So I'll briefly go over our points, and then if Councilmember McGregor and Mayor Whalen want to add anything, they certainly can. So we met with representatives from MediaCom on June 10th, and we laid out an agenda to really discuss 3 main points: the phase 2 build out, the expansion on the DEED broadband grant project, and then phase 3 build out. So in MediaCom's estimation, there are 277 unserved homes that span about 23 miles of Minnetrista. These homes don't meet the density requirement of 15 homes per cable mile, so they are not, under their assumption, required to build them out. So our phase 2 build out discussion, we started out, we believe that MediaCom is obligated per their contract, and you can see that language is in there, to build out phase 2. They believe it is unreasonable for them due to the lack of density. They won't make money on this, or they think they won't make money on this, so they are seeking additional funding sources to build out phase 2 and phase 3 to the 277 unserved homes. So they proposed verbally that we go for another DEED border to border grant to score higher and increase the chances of receiving an award. They would be seeking a local match from the city at an estimated $150,000. So the timeline on this was, it's not exact, but the due date would be in third quarter of 2022 with an award in 2023. So that was the phase 2 discussion. The broadband extension for the deed grant discussion kind of led to attachment G. We asked them to provide an estimate and a proposal to build out what we believe to be surrounding areas to the project. And you can kind of see that broken down. In total, Mediacom estimates the entire build out to cost around $220,000, and they would be seeking a local aid of around $104,000 to $130,000. And then our phase 3 build out was kind of all wrapped into that. They would be looking to include those areas in the 2022-2023 border to border grant application. So that is just a very quick overview, and I don't know if Mayor Whalen or Councilmember Gregor wanted to add anything, and I'm happy to answer questions as well.
Thank you, Allie. So, Ann, I'm going to let you chime in here. Any comments or additional information you'd like to share?
Yeah. First of all, Allie, very, very good job on this write-up. I really like your chart. I love your maps. You did a really, really good job, and it's very clear as to what took place. As far as the meeting, I thought the meeting was a lot friendlier than I ever expected it to be. I thought they were going to come in hostile, but they didn't, and they came in working, but at the same time, they came in with a plan to get more money. So my comment is, and I guess we'll get to this a little bit later, but my comment is that we do definitely want to look at extra time and possibly put money there first. Okay.
Okay. I'll kind of weigh in here. So yeah, I guess we did have some discussions as to whether or not they're obligated to build out phase 2. As Allie kind of pointed out, they claim they're not obligated because of the density. We claim no, they are obligated regardless of the density. So there's a little bit of a disconnect or difference there in opinion. But phase 3 is clear. They're not obligated to build that out under the current contract. And so what we did in the meeting, we tried to concentrate a little bit more on phase 3 and a little bit more on how could they expand the current. So currently they have a program, a deed grant, and they're going to be putting it in along 92 into Oxyoke Circle and then also Halstead and Farm Hill. And so we said, well, what would it take if you were to expand that area and include these 29 extra homes along 92 and 26? And we said, come back with a proposal. This is what they came back with. I think so I agree with Ann, we have to look at other options as well, but I also think the other options, I'm a little concerned. Here's my concern with extra time. And you probably don't know this, but we've been talking with extra time since last October, and so far nothing has happened with them. And that's a concern of mine. How soon and how fast would they be willing to move? That's the question. I don't see them moving too fast on this. They don't seem to want to do a whole lot unless they have a whole bunch of people that say yes, they want it, and they have a place to put their cell phone towers and et cetera, et cetera. So that's my only concern with extra time. I do believe they could do it quickly if they had the manpower to do it. As far as I think, so I'm kind of wondering if we would want to consider kind of going both routes, both the Mediacom route and going back to them with a counter proposal to include additional homes in their current project areas, and also maybe coming up with a proposal, a firm proposal that we could put in front of extra time. Any thoughts in that category? Allie or Mike, do you want to kind of weigh in on any of that?
I'll just chime in a little bit. I wanted to, for the council members that did not participate in the meeting with MediaCom just to kind of solidify the numbers. So as the mayor and Councilmember McGregor both mentioned, the meeting actually was pretty positive overall. We were coming in looking at phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 2, they're obligated to do. Phase 3, we know they're not. And they're basically, their proposal to us was to kind of provide us with a combo platter and then tie that to a future deed grant. And the goal that and they believe that we're going to get a good result from applying for another grant, even though we just got one. They think it's more of a positive that we just got one versus a negative. And I think that was different than what I had heard before from others. So the grant that they would go for would be for $1.5 million. $750,000 would be grant money, and $750,000 would be shared between MediaCom and the city. So it's a total of $1.5 million. And I think they'd be going for a $750,000 grant. And so the 750 that would be shared between the city and MediaCom would be 600 for MediaCom and 150 for the city. That's the 10%, 150,000 of a total price of 1.5 million. So I just wanted to clarify that. So again, and we're going to be, I think, our best position would be based on the language that's currently in the contract to gear the dollars potentially given by the city towards this construction project overall, both of phase 2 and phases 3, would be to earmark our money for phase 3, because currently, as the mayor mentioned, they're supposed to do phase 2, even though they're saying it's impossible for them based on density to do phase 2. So, I mean, it's kind of picking nits a little bit, but that's kind of the long and the short of it on the financing. So, I mean, it's based on getting a grant, and the grant timeline is a September application, and then you find out in January of 2022 if you get it. So, I mean, we had other discussions about, well, what if we don't, and what are you going to do? Are you still going to put up 750,000? There's a lot of moving parts here. So,
Yeah. So I guess the question to the council is, do you want staff to put a counter proposal to send back to MediaCom? I guess that would be the first question. And Anne, I know you said you thought we should put our money into extra time. What do you think about a counter proposal to MediaCom and a proposal to extra time?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with doing that. In fact, you could even throw Lakeside Networks in there too, because they seem to be able to cover people that they can't. But here's the thing: if you don't believe that extra time can do what they say they can do, or don't believe that there's that they can do anything faster than MediaCom, is that the reason why you're leaning more towards giving the deed money that we get again to MediaCom?
No, and no, not really. No, I don't want to give a lot of money to, or I don't want to do nothing with MediaCom in hopes that extra time will come in and do something. So that's why I'm saying, I'm wondering if we don't want to do two proposals, one to MediaCom to expand the current area like we discussed in our meeting, but also then to put a proposal on the table to maybe both extra time and Lakeside to provide service to the other areas that aren't covered.
Mayor Whalen, this is Allie. I just wanted to clarify something that Ann said. So the deed money is granted to the provider. The city is not doling out the deed money to a chosen provider. So I don't even know if Extra Time has any experience in getting awarded or applying for deed grants. And I know MediaCom has an entire department designated for such. So I doubt Extra Time is applying for any sort of deed grant money. I just wanted to clarify that the city isn't obtaining these funds and being the, financial administrator of those funds.
Okay, good
Right.
point. Good,
And
good
then
point.
the other thing too to keep in mind, when we had our meeting last fall with with Extra Time, they made it real clear that they've never received or taken, and they're not interested in accepting funds from government. So I don't even know if they would accept anything from the city itself. I don't know.
Mayor
We'd have to
Wellen, I think you're right. They make it very clear they want cities to put their money towards residents, and then they help residents fund the micro cells. But I think at the very minimum, they're just looking for access to the water tower.
Yeah.
They haven't asked for funds in really any capacity. I'm putting those numbers there so we kind of have an idea of total
Yeah.
funds, but they are really just asking for water tower space. So
Okay.
just
And that
another
would be,
point of clarification.
yeah, and that would be Extra Time as well as Lakeside.
Correct. I mean, they provide nearly the same service, with Extra Time, in my opinion, providing faster service to more residents. So I don't know if we would want to lease space to both or to one. That would be up to the council.
Mhm.
Okay, well,
Okay.
let me make one more comment, and I'll let other people talk. But the thing that I see is that I felt from the meeting that MediaCom wasn't overly interested in the definitely rural areas, and I felt that Extra Time, because they wouldn't have the tree cover, could move in faster and get something done long before the end of 2022. That's the only comment I'm going to make on that side of it.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Council?
Lisa, this is Kathleen.
Yeah, go ahead.
What did Bob Vos think of MediaCom saying that they don't have to do phase 2?
He said, no, they do. he, he felt, and he felt, yes, that they, according to the contract, regardless of the density, are obligated to do phase 2. And so that it'll be interesting. The question that the issue that we would have is, how do we force them to do that? That's the big question. So
Did Bob say anything on that?
well, yes and no. Yeah, it's difficult. Let me just put it that way.
I can maybe help you out, Councilmember Refkin. He said, he believes that MediaCom would really fight us on that. So it's a matter of, does the city want to spend legal funds trying to fight for them to build phase 2 or not? Is kind of what my take from it was.
So here's my question on that. We have a current contract with them and they're saying they're not obligated to do phase 2. Why would we want to enter into a new contract with them when they can just play this card again and say, well, it's still not built out, we still don't want to do it? My concern is they'll just keep, playing this game and delaying it then, because if there's not the density, they don't want to do it, they won't have the income.
If I could dive in here, so I think we understand that, and they understand that. I think they understand they have. I would guess, if you want to use the phrase upper hand, probably on most cities, not just us. So, as we talked about this, when they came to us with this, as I called it, a combo platter, a mix of phase 2 and phase 3 homes, and it would be an entire build out via this grant process. That was their goal. They understand that it's going to be difficult for them to complete phase 2, even though we're going to try to hold their feet to the fire. But when you mix the remaining homes, both in phase 2 and phase 3, and then look at as the mayor mentioned a little earlier, add the additional 29 homes onto the end of the grant, those are phase 3 homes, we believe. Those additional 29 on County Road 26 east and west. Those are all homes in the phase 3 area. So we don't really have anything concrete in the contract for that build out. And one of the things I think the mayor said is, like in good faith, why don't we work together on trying to expand what we can this year in the grant, and that'll demonstrate that you are really interested in trying to figure this out for our residents that don't have anything at all right now. And as we work on this grant, and so the only thing I had was some of the pricing was a little kind of different than what I maybe anticipated on these additional 29 homes. So I guess we could talk about that. But I understand your question, council member. It's like they do sort of have the upper hand, but when they're coming back to us and saying we have a plan to do the remaining homes, phase 2 and phase 3, I think we're better off trying to work with that than to just go to court and fight over the remaining, I don't know how many homes are still not built in phase 2. They seem to think they have a winnable case. That doesn't mean they're right, but I think our time is better spent trying to figure something out and earmark our money towards phase 3 things. And it will technically, they'll be finishing phase 2 on their dime. So.
Kathleen, does that kind of paint a better
Yeah.
picture for you? Okay.
Yeah, no, I understand. I guess my concern is if they don't get the grant, then
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's
and then if
that's
we
what
just
I
wasted
say.
18 months,
That's what the mayor said at the meeting. Well, what if you don't get the grant?
Yeah, and I mean,
So,
that's the big catch. Would there be something in the contract, negotiation process that says, well, if you don't get the grant, you're still going to do, X, Y, and Z type thing?
yeah, well, the actual going for the new grant, the next grant, that's not in the contract. So, I mean, there's nothing we can hold them to on that. I mean, it's just we get the grant or we don't get the grant. That won't
Right.
impact the contract, but it will impact their ability to finish phase 2. So,
Yeah. Okay. That's all I've got
Yeah.
for right now.
Thanks. John or Pam, any comments or questions?
This is John.
John,
The price,
go ahead.
the prices that you talked with MediaCom, that was predicated on doing things the way they do and the way they've done in the past and the way they continue to do it. Although I see they recommended fiber optic versus copper, which I certainly, or cable, which I would agree with, just a better product. Are their prices predicated on the fiber optic or the old way?
I think
My understanding was fiber optic.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, good. In comparing Extra Time and Lakeside, and we haven't heard anything about Lakeside to speak of, I do tend to come down on the side with Ms. McGregor with Extra Time and MediaCom kind of being a duel here. Lakeside, down on the bottom under other comments, Allie, you quoted that they have a take rate required. Is my understanding is you have to guarantee X number of locations. Is that what a take rate is?
Right. So they need, I believe it's a 70% take rate. So in any given area, so they say we can serve 40 customers, they need at least 70% take rate to make it worth them building out that area and to even build out that area. Yes. Yep.
Okay, now with Extra Time, none of that is quoted. So is Extra Time either all or nothing, or will they put in micro cell towers if we have the customers to do it?
Yes, your second comment is correct.
Okay. And how would the city propose going about that? Because I still see I don't see MediaCom coming down 26. I don't see them coming down Kingswood. I don't see them serving my area specifically if I need to get right on the home base here. So something on extra time I would prefer, I think, and the customers would prefer as a more of a line of sight, and it's not a satellite type approach. It's more of a solid product. It's just whether they can do everything they say they can do. But how would one go about reaching out to the residents to get a feel for what they want or think?
That's a great question. I haven't thought that far. I mean, obviously we know the areas where they aren't. So in my mind, if it's a city, neighborhood partnership, there's some sort of program where we need you to round up your neighbors, apply for some sort of funds from the city, and that money will be given to Extra Time to build a microcell in your neighborhood. If that's what the council wanted to do, is a city customer relationship. I don't know if that's something you want to entertain, but that's the only way I see it working, I think. Or the city just builds the microcells, or the city gives Extra Time the funds. There's a few ways to do it, I imagine, but I haven't thought about that much.
Yeah, and to chime in here, I'm not really seeing the city participating financially with those people. I think, to me, what they're, as Allie mentioned earlier, what they're interested is access to our water towers, and there'll be some sort of lease agreement with whether it's Lakeside and or Extra Time for those for the ability to connect to our water tower. I think once they get on the water tower, I think they've got a selling point to customers. They say, look, we've got technology that's available. If, as Allie mentioned, if you get 70% for whichever company it was, we can come in and give you pretty good internet. I'm not sure if there's a dollar amount the city would give to directly to residents, but maybe what we do is we provide maybe the location for these microcells or something. I don't know. I mean, there's other things we can do versus just dishing out money. So.
Well, Mike, in your opinion, either Extra Time or Lakeside, they're both predicated on having access to water towers. I've never been privy into. I know we got other suppliers using the towers. What does that mean to the city? Is that something the city is comfortable with just leasing out all the space all the time?
Yeah, that's a good question, council member. So that, when we were researching this and some of the early work that Allie did, we've had people from Lakeside approach the city in years past, and our general take was, well, we have telecommunication providers that have leased access through us on our water towers, and that's kind of the going rate. And then after a further discussion with Bob Vose, we asked the question, do you have to, they're different? I mean, one's providing internet and the other strictly, and the other company does all sorts of things. Verizon is mostly telephone. But they're in the business of other businesses as well. So, I mean, we wouldn't necessarily have to charge the same lease rate for people companies just trying to get space on our water towers for the internet service providers versus telephone. We can charge whatever we want. So that kind of opened up kind of a new ball game for us. So I don't know what the right number is to charge them for a lease on our water tower or water towers, but I think it's going to be less than what we charge Verizon and AT&T for the telephone stuff. That'd be my guess.
Okay. Those are the questions I currently have. Thanks.
Allie, did you have another comment on that?
I did. Yeah. Sorry. I was trying to find a good time to pipe in. I guess with that thought, if Lakeside is requiring a take rate and we allow extra time to be on the water tower, I doubt they're going to get that take rate if extra time is already on the water tower ready to serve residents. So that's just a thought too.
Sure.
Well, what if we did a legal binding contract and both extra time and lakeside were allowed, let's say the first year, to be on the water tower at no cost. This is just one, one idea. But then there's, as time goes on, so let's just say they have a 5-year contract. The first year it's $0, the second year it's 2,000, the third year it's 5,000 or whatever. Wouldn't that also give them an incentive to try and get more customers?
Potentially, yeah. I would
I mean,
probably want to talk with legal counsel. I mean, I feel like this is be different than the norm on what
right.
to charge. Generally you're dealing with telephone companies. And the marketplace is pretty well set on what to charge for those lease agreements. Don't know if anybody else besides us are thinking about charging small internet-based service providers a different rate at a lower rate for what? I don't know what the rates would be. So
Mike, I believe I reached out to a few cities because I had that question myself, and they have they're under contract with a few cities for $5,000 a year. So
yeah,
that's just kind of a ballpark for what
Okay.
extra time. I don't know about Lakeside.
yeah.
I've kind of heard that same number from Lakeside, though, the $5,000 range.
Well, I
So,
Yeah.
think I think mayor and council, I think they've offered it. They said we can go that high when Mr. Abel has had conversations with representatives from Lakeside in years past. I mean, they know their niche. They know they're small. They know they're not like Verizon and AT&T, even though, we told them you'd probably have to pay those kind of rates. And they're saying, well, we can't even get close to that. So, but when we researched with Mr. Vose and found out you can do whatever you want, but you don't want to give it away, but you don't have to charge what you're charging for Verizon and AT&T for space on your tower. But there are things that are going to go into maintaining those antennas on our tower. It requires us to work with I forget the guy's name, Kelly something or other, that does stuff. I mean, you want to maintain your water tower integrity, so
right.
the equipment doesn't ruin your water tower. Then you got a big problem too. So
Mhm.
I mean, there's some cost built into just. It's not like you just like putting up a flagpole on your house. I mean, there's a lot more stuff to it than just to
Mhm.
have them install equipment on your water tower. So
Right. So just before we wrap this up, and I think we should make some decisions. The other thing that we talked about with MediaCom is it's a little more time sensitive if we wanted to add the extra 29 whatever number of homes it is, because they would piggyback that onto their current um, area that they're going to be working in. And so if I don't know when they're starting, but whenever they start to expand their fiber optics to Oxyoke, they would want to know beforehand if indeed we're going to participate and they're going to expand it to these additional homes, because they need the equipment, they need the manpower, they need to figure that and do all the figuring on that.
right.
So, um, council, what's your pleasure? I guess that's the question. Do you want to pursue that? Should we go back with a counteroffer or
So
not?
Mayor Whalen, just for clarification, so if you look at page 21 of the work session packet, you'll see two options for County Road 26 East and then two options for County Road 26 West. And they're different dollar amounts because they're different lengths and they serve different number of homes. And number one on each one has a take rate at 100%, I believe, adjusted take rates for the expected take rate. And then number two is no adjusted take rate, which is higher. And so and as Ali put into the memo, you're looking at the denominator for all of this work is 223,000 something dollars. And if you add the number ones, you get 104,000 something, and if you add the number twos, you get 129, almost 130,000, and the differences are 46 something percent to 58%. And I think what the mayor's trying to see what the council is comfortable with is, you know, I kind of think I would rather just pay some flat fee. I don't know what we base it on, but instead of this sliding scale, you know, like if they get everybody to go with it, then well, we get the lower amount, and if we don't, we get the higher amount. That seems to be not my problem or the city's problem. I mean, if you get take rates and if you don't get take rates, that's not our issue. We're just saying we want to get access for an additional 29 homes. Now I'm thinking these homes might go for it because they got nothing right now. But I'm still a little weird about not wanting just to have this nebulous number. I don't know if it's going to be somewhere between 104,000 and 129,000 or whatever it is. So I think that's what you're alluding to, I believe, Mayor.
Yeah, right. And I think their numbers are pretty high here.
Yeah.
You know, for the amount of homes, additional homes that would be served, I think that's
Right.
pretty high. And I think maybe that's what Councilmember McGregor maybe was also kind of getting at. But Ann, what do you think?
Okay. I think we need to get down to hardcore specifics as to exactly a number and exactly what they're going to do, and do the exact same thing with specifics for extra time. Because what I don't want us to do is end up giving Mediacom money and not having money for extra time and ending up excluding a bunch of people for another year to 2 years because Mediacom doesn't move very fast. So I just want to make sure that we cover our bases as best we can with the money we have.
I agree. Good comment. Yep. Very well said. So it kind of sounds like we need to put together a proposal for extra time and probably simultaneously for Lakeside as well, along with a proposal, a counter proposal to Mediacom. So we're kind of doing a 3-track approach here. Is that, and then see what they all come back at.
Right.
I mean, just
This is Kathleen. I'm just curious what the other council members think of extra time versus Lakeside. Like, if you had to pick, which one would you want to use? Because I know like extra time has better speeds. It looks like their prices are about the same. Like, what does everyone feel? Because I don't want us to be focusing on both of them when we might just be better off focusing on one and just spending the rest of our time focusing on them and Mediacom.
okay.
Okay, I'll make a comment. My fear is that extra time is really good at sales, and Lakeside may not be as good at selling their product, and therefore they may actually be equal, and that's why we want to go after both of them. Extra time looks really good, sounds really good, in fact too good to be true. So that's my fear.
So Kathleen, why wouldn't you want to put a proposal to both of them?
I just don't want staff wasting their time, basically, because they're stretched thin and have a lot going on. So, I mean, if all the council agrees that, we really like extra time more, then do we want staff wasting their time putting together a proposal for Lakeside? That's just my thought on it, making sure staff is using resources best.
Sure, I understand.
And I guess one
Pam?
clarification, I'm sorry, Mayor. So a proposal to extra time or Lakeside, are you just talking about a water tower lease agreement for a specific amount? Is that what I'm getting at?
I think so, unless there's some other ideas that anybody else has. That's what we're kind of hearing. Oh,
No,
go ahead.
No. In your cost to city, a little square, you have minimum water tower lease agreements with the city, and then maximum city council cost share of installation of microcells. We're not going to do with 68 microcells, but why don't we pick microcells, a number of microcells that could, and I want to know if it can be done. Pick a number of microcells that can get internet to the people who really need it and then take a look at that time frame. If the time frame is the same exact thing as MediaCom, it gives us another factor. Right now, I think Extra Time, can come in faster and get more people under this umbrella in a much quicker pace. So I don't want to do 68 microcells, but a few microcells, enough to cover the people needed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to that point, council member, you're right. They're not going to be able to do 68 cells. I mean, maybe, I don't know how many, 3 years, 4 years, I don't know how
Yeah,
many cells we can do, but maybe we prioritize. I don't know.
Right.
I think there's got to be something. I mean, there's no way they're going to install 68 all at once. So
No.
Mhm. Okay.
maybe that's part of the agreement. We say we need a prioritized list of where you put your 68 cells.
Well, we could give them that map
Yeah.
that I created
Right.
saying, you're under contract to serve these homes. Here's our water tower space. Here's the money to build the cells. Do it by the end of the year. Is that kind
Right.
of okay?
Yeah,
Or have
that's where
so
I'm
many
coming from.
per year.
Yes.
That's where I'm coming from.
Or have so
Got
many
it.
per
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I
Okay.
tend to agree with the mayor about, they talk a good game, but we haven't seen any action from them. And I think in general, money kind of talks here. So unless we enter into agreement with a water tower lease and then start talking about the other items that listed in the cost to city box with either vendor, frankly, but for sure with Extra Time, that, they're not going to probably do anything until they see some money or they have some access or both. So
hmm
I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else? Anne, anything else?
I agree with all that was said there. One thought, and this might be a little crazy, but isn't it all? How about if we did where we did some type of a proposal, like we will lease, the water tower, because that seems to be a very heavy point on what they can and can't do, and give them a timeline. The lease is this cost if you do it in this amount of time. This cost, you know what I mean? Give them incentive to work fast, where based on the money. Just a thought.
hmm
So you're saying build out 30 homes by the end of the year and you get a discounted lease rate? Is that
Right, something like that.
okay?
I know that. I mean, putting a thought that when I lived in a different city a long time ago, they do this often. They offered, they did a bridge over a main road, and they said if you get it done at this, it's 6 months ahead of time, we will pay you this much more. You know what I mean, to do the job, but you got knocked off 6 months of really labor, a lot of residential chaos. So an incentive for them to speed it up with some type of money or less money cost to them with the water tower. Just a thought.
Okay. Good idea.
right.
Other than that, I like the a counter proposal idea, and I do know a couple people out here on Deer Creek Road have gotten Extra Time or in the process, and they're
Yep.
very happy with what they have.
I was going to
Oh,
mention that to Councilmember Mortensen. There are some on Sunnyfield as well. So they have gotten into the area, but the neighbors are banding together to purchase the microcells themselves. That's why,
Yep.
they're not forking out the money for the microcells.
Right, but they are happy with what they've got.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think that's their main selling point to people is they end up with fiber to the home, some really good internet speeds. It does cost you some money as a resident, but when you pull together, your money that you're spending now for hotspots through Verizon or whatever is, you're better off just using that money and going and banding together with your neighbors and making it work for you. And I think that's kind of what Ms. Polfus is talking about. We try to step in with these microcells and try to see if we can incentivize them to build them. So.
All right. So let me kind of wrap this up a little bit here. Sounds like we're asking staff to put together a proposal for extra time, which would include whatever cell towers on our water towers, and then potentially some microcells. Is that fair to say? And again, you guys, the staff, figure out numbers, figure out where, that kind of thing, and come back to the council with this proposal. And then when we see it, we can either agree to it or tweak it or whatever, and then it can go out to extra time. Is that kind of what we're thinking at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So one more question. Do we want to, and again, it would just be a proposal, but we wouldn't have to do it, but depending on, do we want to go to MediaCom and put a proposal out there for them, but go much lower than what they're recommending or what they're proposing? We go in with a proposal, and we go in also with the time frame as to when we want this done. Do we want to even pursue that, or is this off the table completely?
I know this is intended for council, but I think we have to think really hard about playing ball with MediaCom or not playing ball with MediaCom. I tend to think that maybe there's a differing dollar amount than what was cited by them as a counter proposal, but I think we're better off working with them on these extra 29 homes than not working with them.
Okay, well, that's kind of where I'm coming from. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's kind of why I wanted the dual track, both
Right.
extra time as well as MediaCom.
I
And
agree.
whatever we propose to MediaCom, obviously we want to go in with a lower amount than what they've proposed. And I don't think it needs to be on the take rate either. I don't want to have it be precedent on the take rate.
I tend to agree with you.
This is Kathleen. What number are you thinking of then, going back with?
Good question.
Well, it's a good question. And,
Yeah.
the lowest dollar amount is 46.8%. That's the number ones for each of the two County Road 26 sections, east and west. And that's 46%. I don't know. I wouldn't go much higher than that. 45%, 50%, 40%. I don't know. I think I'd like to consult with Bob Vose on this and see what his input would be. I'm not really too excited about the no adjusted take rate for internet and paying 58%. I feel like that's a little high. So I don't know the exact number, council member, but I think we could try to figure out what that is, and we'll get back to you guys on that. So,
Well, the other thing too is I know that Bob Vos felt that the $75 per mile
right,
was a bit high. And
right,
since they're going to be in this area anyway doing the work, I don't think it's going to be 75,000 per mile just to extend it a little bit further. I mean, they don't have to do that much more work in order to do that. So having said that, I don't think we should be looking at more than like 30 to maximum 40% in terms of our contribution. I was thinking more in terms of like 30%. But maybe your idea of talking to Bob Boss and seeing what he would recommend would be a good idea.
yeah, because we've used Mr. Vose when we've had to deal with lease contracts for the water tower for Verizon and AT&T and such, and he understands the going rates, and so I would turn to him to try to find what would be a sweet spot on that number. So,
Mike, I would pose this. I don't see them taking anything less than that when they can just apply for the grant at the end of the year and get us off their back until either they're awarded or not awarded. I don't know if they would take much lower than the 104,000.
right.
That's just something to think about.
All right, Council, John?
I would still go somewhere in between. I mean, we still haven't heard the answer. If they're going to do the deed, and I didn't unless I missed it, if they go for the deed grant and they don't get it, where are we at? We're already at 2 years. We're 2 years into the future, and still nothing more has been done. So, I mean, I wouldn't probably lowball them, but I would certainly do a counter offer somewhere in between. And obviously, we're going to try to get something from Extra Time as well. I agree with Ms. McGregor that I think they have a very good sales department. When I was listening to them a month ago or whenever that was, it did seem too good to be true. But I still think they could obviously get the answer quicker, and we don't have to be burying cable necessarily in the ground all over the cities.
Mhm. Now, just one other thing to think about. It's with MediaCom, you can get internet, you can get phone, and you can get cable. So there's a few other choices that you have with MediaCom. I'm not promoting MediaCom, believe me, I'm no way. I mean, and I'm not promoting them over Extra Time either. I'm just saying there's Extra
Lisa,
Time.
I may
Yeah.
need to double check that. I believe this is only for fiber. I may need to double check that. I don't think they would be offering the triple play with TV and phone. I can double check that though.
I would double check. It would be high. I can't believe they would be digging in the ground and only putting in fiber. I think they're doing all three just because it would be so much cheaper. But check on that.
I
So,
will.
Council, let's do this. Have staff put together two proposals, one for Extra Time, one for MediaCom. I think you've kind of heard where we're all coming from. And then when you bring that back, we can take a look and then we can say, yes, let's go for it with either one or both. Then we can make that decision. Are you all okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good.
Are we omitting Lakeside at this point?
That's what I'm hearing. Why don't we go, well, let's work with, let's see what we can accomplish with Extra Time and see where that goes. And if we don't move along with that, maybe then we revert back to Lakeside. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So that is going to wrap up our broadband discussion. And staff, do you have enough direction and information?
I believe so, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. So now we'll move on to organics. Mr. Brony?
Mr. Grimm is going to take this one.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council. So I'll try to wrap up 36 pages in less than 36 minutes. No, no, actually, I'll try to shoot for a lot less than that even. So a lot of this was informational, for the just background and stuff for the council, and I assume you've all read it in detail, thoroughly. So I'm going to try to just hit the high points as far as what we're, obviously trying to do just as far as tonight's discussion. So this is on pages 25 through 61 in the packet, and the crux of it comes from the largest item that was attached was the Hennepin County Ordinance on Recycling. It's Ordinance 13, and that was basically a lengthy 17-page ordinance that details their recycling, I guess, standards and guidelines and all the different details with that. One of the items I think council knows is over the years, the Hennepin County recycling sort of changed, or they have changed and devoted more efforts to trying to get the cities within Hennepin County to expand into organics. And one of the ways they've done this is through the funding formula and allocating dollars, more dollars towards organics and less towards curbside. And I think on that first page of the packet, or page 28 it shows what for 2022, sort of a 40-50-10% split, 40% for curbside, 50% for organics, and then 10% for, I guess, organics multifamily, which we really don't have a lot of multifamily within the city. So one of the, I guess the main item that's bringing back this discussion, as we've had this in the past, is not real recently, but January 1 of 2022. So basically for 2022, the ordinance states that cities should be doing some sort of organics type activity. And as you probably saw in the packet, a lot of the bigger cities in Hennepin County have more organized curbside organics programs, but I think it was on page which one? Which wanted to show again. A lot of cities still are trying to figure out what to do with organics. I think that was on page 53 of the packet. It was a list of cities under population under 10,000, which we are included, and it showed Mound, Orono, Minnetrista, Shorewood, a lot of our neighbors that are pretty much in the same boat as us as far as trying to figure out what we want to do with organics, recycling component. One of the things that the county suggested is whether it's viable to potentially partner with one of our neighbors versus just doing a drop-off site on our own. Definitely, looking for direction from council as far as what they're looking for as far what they would be recommending. I think from a staff level, the drop-off site makes the most sense versus trying to institute any citywide curbside organics. I know that people that have Randy's as their garbage hauler, they have that separate blue bag program, but I know when we've talked to Waste Management in the past, they really they offer more of the organics drop-off site. They really don't have a full-fledged pickup program for their entities they have contracts with. So I don't know, I guess that's sort of a quick summary of where we're at on this item, and I'd probably open it up for council as far as thoughts, comments, suggestions, questions after reading through the materials.
Okay, council questions. I'm going to start with John this time.
Yes,
That's because we're confused.
the one topic I'm fully versed on. Yes. If we have a drop-off site, what do we have to prove to the county to meet the requirements, or is it just setting up a drop-off site that would get us the extra money?
From my understanding is they've in Waste Management, there was even a chart in there as far as rates based on how often we'd want it picked up, whether it was weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. Obviously, there's some trade-offs as far as costs, but also as far as maintenance and how the site, looks, smells, whatever you want to say. But our understanding was that basically, setting up a site and having some regular pickup would be would meet the requirements or the intent of the ordinance.
Okay. Has the city received requests from residents to have something like this?
Oof. I don't know if it's been very frequently. I know, some of the people that feel more passionate about it, or for lack of a word, are more interested in it, have probably made the choice to have Randy's as their garbage hauler, seeing that they offer that program. I think it comes up, once in a while. It's similar to, I think I threw in there as far as if we're going to look at an organic site. I mean, we do get the question every so often each year as far as yard waste and what to do with that. So I guess I wouldn't say it's a constant item that we're hearing, but I'd say sort of, or occasionally we probably hear about it.
Okay, so Randy's and Republic have merged, or Republic bought Randy's, whichever. So
Right.
that's two. So that's two is Waste Management, the other garbage hauler in our city.
That in Black
Blackovia.
too.
Yeah, Black. That's right, Black. Okay. Well, Randy's is $75 a year for the blue bag, or they bill quarterly, I know, but it'd be like $625 a month. So that's not a whole lot. If the city just has a drop-off site, the people that are are dropping off, they're not being charged. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I think it would just be part of our contract, and I think it would be part of our overall rates versus it wouldn't be as easy to trace to try to get people to opt in or anything like that. So yeah, correct.
You would just advertise it through the normal city directions that you now have it, and here's what the requirements are, et cetera.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. If it doesn't cost the city a lot to set up, and of course set up is probably the minor part, maintaining it, keeping it clean. We know how sometimes when people drop things off, they aren't necessarily dropped off the way they're supposed to be dropped off. And meeting the conditions that are required, as long as the city is not incurring a lot of costs, I don't have an issue. Again, as a Randy's customer, we don't partake of theirs, but I know that some do. So that's the simplistic way for people just to have it right at their curb instead of having to drive to the city or wherever to do it. That's my thoughts.
Thanks, Tim.
For a point of reference, so the main cost we have would obviously be the payment to Waste Management. That's on page 49 of the packet, depending on how often, but weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, if it was a 2-yard or 4-yard size. And that would be some of the different, that would be our main cost, would be that contract component.
And just one more thing, and looking at that, so let's say we have, I don't know how big a 2-yard versus 4-yard. I know on a football field what that is. I don't know what that is as a container. So if you have a weekly rate for a 2-yard next year of $84.29, but you only have 3 people putting something in there, that's I guess the concern I've got is we're not getting bang for our bucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let me ask something. Is it, I don't know that we can do this or should do it, but just a question, should we require all of our garbage haulers in the city to offer this? And then would that meet the requirements of the county?
Do we have to have all of them to do it? We have one right now. I don't know if Black-Oviac does it or not. Has anybody asked them?
They don't currently offer it, no.
Okay, but they might. If they know this ordinance is going to be effective coming up, they may be looking at doing it. We just don't know, right?
Right. Well,
I would say that the chances of Blakoviak and the companies that currently aren't in the organics business, I think they're not in the organics business because they don't want to be in the organics business. I think to say this city's going to require them to would just dwindle a number of vendors that we have available. I think you'd only end up with Randy's or Republic, whoever bought them. That would be the only vendor you'd have. One of the questions I asked at the meeting we had was the county, if they're really that interested in organics, they should figure out a way to not have a one-size-fits-all approach to this, because what's good for St. Louis Park really isn't all that good for Minnetrista on this. So
right. Mm-hmm.
it's not the same dynamics here. I mean, we have a lot of long driveways and a lot of long stretches between stops. It's just not the same. So it's hard to say we're going to require you to recycle organics, otherwise you can't hold a license here. We're not going to have any vendors here. So that's my take.
I'm not a fan of telling them at all what they have to do. So, and I think if somebody really wants to do organics, if a resident really wants to recycle organic, they have an option with Randy's. I'm not a fan of drop-off sites at all. I think that if where are you going to put it, first of all? Who wants to live by that?
Well,
the maintenance of it.
It would be on site here at City Hall somewhere, but Councilmember Mortensen and the rest of the council, if we don't do this, we're going to be in crosswise with the county. So I mean, one of the things we have to do something. So the drop-off site is probably the least intrusive to residents. I don't know what page it is, Brian, but there's something in there about cost, like to implement on a household pickup. It's $4 and $5. It's on page 49. Monthly recycling rates per household to so.
From which vendor though? Is that
I mean, we're already charging $4 and $5 for recycling, and then if you want to add organics to that contract, I don't know what that means dollar-wise, if they could even do it.
No, I think from our discussion with Waste Management and their contact last year, yeah, the cost would be so prohibitive that they were basically only gave the drop-off site rates there. The thing that was a little disappointing, and then we talked about at a staff level, is that the county is suggesting that like cities should try to band together and partner, but it's a little disappointing that the county isn't taking more of a proactive approach and maybe making a few drop-off sites that they almost coordinate with the either the vendors on or just a different way where they're it's obviously being pawned off on the cities. It seems like a little bit right now, but they're suggesting cities should talk to each other versus really leading these discussions at the county level.
Right. It seems to be kind of a backwards approach in my book, but I think we're going to have to do something. So,
Mike, when do we have to make the decision by?
well, what is it, Brian? We have to have it something in place before January 1. So.
Okay.
So I figured we wouldn't come to any 100% consensus tonight. I think we wanted to get it in front of the council in it's June here now, so we had some time to digest the materials and the information, and even just we just met with the county here recently because they were putting together all this information and having meetings with the 40 some cities in Hennepin County. So this is relatively new information, some of this to us. So we want to at least get some council feedback, and obviously this will have to come back again at some point to try to finalize a plan.
Yeah, I
thought
think
you had
there's
a
gonna.
deadline.
Yeah, wasn't
Excuse
there a
me.
June 25th deadline or
Yeah.
something?
That's what I thought. That's what I'm reading on the front page here. I thought there was a June 25th deadline.
Well,
There is for
the June 25th deadline, it applies to if the county basically is allowing or granting $100,000, and it has $100,000 available. I'm trying to find what page that's on, but they're gonna give up to like
First
7 to 13 grants or something for initial setup costs. So that's some initial, I guess, a carrot they're hanging out there to try to, for if cities opt to do a drop-off site, is we may be able to get some small grant money. It probably would be $5,000-$10,000 potentially.
For setup, and that's what my concern was, not just the annual ongoing costs, but there are going to be some initial costs. You might have to have a slab poured. You're going to have to put a tall fence, chain link fence around it so you can actually lock it at times, because you don't want it open 24/7. Possibly, I don't know. There may have to be signage. I mean, I don't know what other costs are going to be involved, but certainly some setup costs are going to be involved. So that was my question. What are those costs? Do we know? Have we even thought about that?
Well, I think you're right as far as what those initial costs. It probably would be whether there's a slab, but yeah, it's on page 29 and 30 of the packet. Basically, it talks about the counties establish a maximum award of $15,000 per site and up to 3 sites per city. Well, obviously we'd be looking at 1, but yeah, like as I noted in the memo, they didn't give much time on the application process. I guess we can let them know we'd be interested in money, but we are still trying to get a handle on what we even are, what they're looking for us to do as far as the requirements to meet this ordinance.
So we have to do this basically, right, to get the additional money?
I think it's actually, I mean, the funding is part of it, but we asked them at a staff level, what is like the consequences of penalties if we just decide, the cost and the headache is going to be more hassle than, you know, the little bit of annual grant money and potentially getting in some initial startup grant. And they were pretty vague and elusive as far as, well, it's an ordinance and you guys are supposed to follow it, was basically the answer we got. There wasn't any, you know, what penalties or what consequences there'd be. 'Cause I was curious myself.
Hi, this is Ann. The way I read this, we can put it off for another year. They only have 100,000. The intent's to fund 7 to 13 sites. Aren't there 7 to 13 other cities who might want a site?
Quite
Yeah,
possibly.
there's over 40, aren't there over 40 cities in Hennepin County alone? I mean, in
Correct.
Hennepin County? So
And if
what there's, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, you can see in that list on page 53, I mean, there's a list of 20 cities or so, 20, you know, or so that really basically they're just saying drop off required or partnership or another drop off. That's cities that are in the same boat as us, and it's pretty much a lot of our neighbors and such.
See if you can bag it for another year.
What we have, so real quick, we're gonna wrap this up in about 5 to 10, well, 5 minutes or so. But so we have to start the program by January 2022. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah,
All right.
per I guess verbatim per the ordinance, that would be what it says. Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have another year, and that's what I'm trying to find out. So we have about 6 to 7 months. So my question, or I guess my take on it would be, why not apply for the 15,000 and see if we get it? I mean, we might as well apply. Even if we don't start it on January 2022, we might start it in March of 2022 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I think we should at least apply for that 15,000.
I agree. I think we need to apply for the grant and then go from there if we don't get it on what we do for the next steps. If we get
Right.
it, then it's the initial cost of putting in the garbage
Pat.
dump is approved.
Right.
And two questions to that as well. I agree if we have to have something in 2022, fine, go for the grant. What are the requirements of the grant? Do we have to prove how we spent the money? Does the money have to be spent by December 31st, 2021? Do we know any of those specifics?
It's on the bottom of page 30, John. The funding
30?
process. Yeah. It says the funding process and when we get the money and how and when we get the final payments and that.
So staff would have to apply basically tomorrow or start tomorrow, and they'll be evaluated and recommendations sent to the board for approval. And the county and city will sign a service agreement for a term of 24 months. And then the county will make 2 payments to the city, one upon execution of the service agreement and one upon completion of the project.
Now that still doesn't give me dates. All it gives me is June 25th.
Right.
I mean, we could apply and so we sign I don't know when you sign the agreement then. You sign the agreement when you get the money, when you start the actual taking in of organics or what? I saw this, but I just didn't see any dates hung on it.
Right. Well, I think what we need to do, because of the timing of this, if we want to apply for the grant, we need to do that. We need to approve, or we need to give staff direction that they should do that. Then we'll have to figure out all of the details. But we know we have to provide, starting in 2022, so next year, we have to provide organic. So we know that. It seems like for our city, the best route would be, even if we don't like it, but this would be the least expensive, and the best route would be a drop-off site. And we know it would probably have to be at City Hall somewhere, but not in front, somewhere where they don't have to, where we won't have to be looking at it. So staff will have to figure that out. I'm sure they'll have to put together some kind of cost estimates. So with that said, are you all in favor of at least applying at this point for these funds? And if we get it, great. And if we decide to do something different, I suppose we don't have to accept the funding. I mean, but I think if we're not even in the ball, if we're not even applying for it, then we know we won't get it.
Well, I think your point is fair there, Mayor, as far as, I mean, if we find out that there's too many strings attached to the grant or the requirements are too onerous, I guess you can always say, thanks, but no thanks. That sounds too, tough
Right.
or whatever. Yeah, so I think that's a fair point.
So council, are you at least on board right now, and we can discuss other things? Well, if we go for this grant, for this setup grant, that's basically saying we're looking at doing a drop-off site. So are you, at this point, without knowing what other options there might be, are you okay pursuing a drop-off site?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes.
have to do it.
Yes.
Let's go ahead.
All right.
We'll have to do it. We have to.
I would entertain it, but I would like to know for sure that we don't have to accept it if we change our mind.
Right. And you can always turn a grant down. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but if we know we have to do it, if we know the drop-off site is the least expensive and probably for our city the best, then let's go for the grant. And if like Brian said, if it's too onerous, if we find out that the conditions to receive the grant money for setup is too onerous, we can always turn that down. Then we can say, forget it, we're not going to do it. So that would be my recommendation. Are we okay with that? I'll start with John. Are you okay with that?
Oh.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Pam?
Yes.
And Kathleen?
Yes.
And Ann?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll say yes. So staff, you kind of know what to do?
I'll say yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Thank you.
I may need Gary and others' help, yes, but yes.
Yeah, and I know this is, so the 25th is your deadline, so I know you only have a couple days, but I
Yeah.
know you can do it. So, all right,
I
Steph.
appreciate your confidence, but I'm
Yes.
not convinced because I've filled out a few grant things in my life, but we'll see. We'll do our best.
Okay. Thank you. I know you will. No, I'm confident you will be successful. All right. With that, that concludes our work session agenda. And I did want to give you guys a few minutes break between so Brian can eat his lobster Alfredo. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
This is Kathleen. I motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Pam, I'll second.
Ann beat you to it, so Ann seconded that. Kathleen made the motion and Ann seconded. All those in favor will signify with aye. I, Lisa Whalen, vote aye. Ann McGregor,
Aye.
Kathleen Refkin,
Aye.
Pam Martinson,
Aye.
and John Chamberlain.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned and we'll be back in about 12 minutes.